Well, welcome everyone to today's webinar. I'm Nick Breit, Partner and Director of Financial Planning in the Private Client Practice at Fiducient Advisors. Given the importance of making informed decisions when it comes to Medicare, we're thrilled to partner once again with Chapter to bring you valuable Medicare insights. At Fiducient Advisors, we recognize that retirement planning goes far beyond Medicare. It requires a thoughtful, holistic strategy to grow your wealth and to secure your financial future. Whether you're approaching retirement or already enjoying retirement, we invite you to explore our private client practice. Our team specializes in providing tailored wealth management solutions designed to meet the unique needs of high net worth individuals and families. And for the HR professionals on our call, our private client practice also offers valuable support to help your employees navigate retirement planning with confidence and clarity. Whether it's optimizing your investment strategy, planning for estate and tax considerations, or ensuring your financial goals align with your retirement plans, we're here to offer personalized guidance and support. If you'd like to learn more, speak with a member of the Fiducient team, we're here and ready to help. We're excited to be joined today by Ari Parker, the co-founder and head of Medicare Advisory at Chapter. Ari holds a JD from Stanford Law School and is the best-selling author of It's Not That Complicated. Ari's approach to Medicare planning has been featured in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and Forbes. In today's presentation, Ari will cover the basics of Medicare along with some thorny complications that may come up along the way. Ari will also cover what sets Chapter apart in the Medicare space, with Chapter's education-first approach and ability to search across 24,000 Medicare plans nationwide to find an ideal Medicare plan based on an individual's needs. Ari, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Nick. Let's go.
Oh, I was just going to say Medicare, frankly, is an area that many people find to be rather complicated. So we're really happy to have you here today to share important insights as it relates to Medicare planning.
Yes, I think anyone who's attending this presentation is going to know more than 99% of people about Medicare by the end. And we really only have 30 minutes of material, and then we'll open it up to questions. So what we're going to go over today is first the key parts of Medicare. Then the 7 costly Medicare mistakes we're going to help you or your clients avoid, or employees, and then finally how to take action. Now, by virtue of attending this presentation, I wanted to offer a complimentary copy of my short book, It's Not That Complicated. You can finish it in one sitting, and it's updated for 2025. So in order to obtain a copy of the book, you can just scan the QR code. Don't worry if you miss it now. We're going to also have this QR code up at the end of the presentation. That QR code will also offer you a chance to sign up for a one-on-one consultation with one of the dedicated members of our Fiducient team. And during that one-on-one conversation, we're going to go over yours or your employees' 3 Ps, your providers, your prescriptions, and your priorities in order to help you search across those 24,000 plans nationwide and narrow to the single best fitting plan based on your 3 Ps. And we're the only Medicare advisory that can do that. So picture Medicare as a 3-legged stool. There are 3 legs. The first leg of the stool is hospital coverage. What happens when you're inpatient? The second leg of the stool is your outpatient coverage, everything outside the hospital. And then the third leg of the stool is drug coverage. Each of these legs correspond to a part. So hospital, that's part A. Outpatient, part B. And finally, drug coverage, D. Part D as in drugs. Let me unpack these parts a little further. So Medicare Part A, your hospital insurance, covers you when you're receiving inpatient care. It also covers skilled nursing facility care, home health care, and hospice care. Now, Part A is typically fully prepaid. Your premiums, there's no monthly charge for Medicare Part A, so long as you or your spouse have worked 10 plus years and paid federal payroll taxes. So no monthly charge for Part A. Then there's Part B. Part B is your outpatient coverage. This is visits to the doctor, visits to specialists, lab work, x-rays, MRIs, even durable medical equipment like a heart monitor, a continuous glucose monitor, a wheelchair, or a walker goes to Medicare Part B. An outpatient surgery, that's Part B as well, like a knee or hip replacement. There's a monthly charge for Part B. The standard Part B premium for this year is $185 per month, and we should know what the standard Part B premium for next year is in just a couple weeks. but there is a monthly charge. And if you and your spouse are each on Medicare Part B, then you owe $185 per month each. This is a picture of your red, white, and blue card. It takes less than 5 minutes to obtain it through your online Social Security account portal. Fast, safe, and secure. Much, much easier than calling the Social Security Administration call center, where you'll wait on hold for over 90 minutes, and they also won't help you sign up for Medicare. They'll just create a callback appointment. So do it through your online Social Security account portal. This is something we help clients with all the time. So John Smith here, you'll see, started Medicare by way of turning 65. So his Part A and Part B dates match. For someone who's still working past age 65, it's totally common for your Part B date to be after your Part A date. And we'll talk about those two scenarios as we go. Now, there are two big ticket items that Medicare doesn't cover. The first, in return for your Part B premium of $185 per month, you get 80/20 coinsurance with the government. The government pays 80%, you owe 20% out of pocket, and there's no cap on that 20%. My mom lives in the Chicagoland area. She received a knee replacement last summer. It's a $50,000 procedure. Mom would have owed $10K for her knee had she not had some type of additional coverage. The very next month, she slipped and broke her elbow. She would have owed 20% for everything related to her elbow as well. So her maximum out-of-pocket exposure for last year would have been well north of 10K had she not had some type of additional coverage. The second big ticket item that original Medicare doesn't cover is long-term care. Long-term care is defined by the activities of daily living, such as eating, bathing, dressing, even cognitive decline goes to long-term care. There's no coverage under Medicare for long-term care. So if your client is in the nursing home, or you have a loved one in a nursing home, or if they're receiving 24/7 around-the-clock care, there's no coverage under original Medicare for that type of care. Long-term care is separate and apart from Medicare. There have been proposals in Congress to add long-term care to Medicare, but they haven't made it out of committee. It would simply be too expensive for the country to insure. So the best time for you, a loved one, or an acquaintance to get long-term care is when you're in your late 40s or 50s. By the time you reach Medicare eligibility at 65, it's oftentimes too late, too expensive to insure for long-term care. So have that conversation earlier. And that's certainly something you can discuss with your Fiducient advisor. So with that, I want to turn to the 7 costly Medicare mistakes that we help you avoid, and you're going to go a long way towards avoiding these by attending today's presentation. So the first misconception we see is that Medicare begins automatically when you turn 65. This is only true if you're taking Social Security. If you're taking Social Security, then the government automatically mails you your red, white, and blue card a few months before your 65th birthday. Most people aren't taking Social Security at 65. Instead, you're waiting for full retirement age or even until age 70. So then, if you want Medicare by way of turning 65, you need to affirmatively sign up for it. And the best way to do it is through your online Social Security account portal. So when can someone who's turning 65 sign up for Medicare? Well, you have a 7-month initial enrollment period that begins 3 months before your 65th birthday, and it extends to your birth month and 3 months after your 65th birthday. So for example, if Nick were turning 65 on December 23rd, then his period to sign up for Medicare would open September 1st. And as long as Nick signs up for Medicare in September, October, or November, then his Medicare will begin December 1st. It's always dated to the first of the month. But if Nick waits until December to sign up for Medicare, then his coverage is going to be delayed. And it's going to be delayed for as long as he waits to sign up. And if he misses his initial enrollment period, then he'll have to wait until next January in order to sign up. So who are the people that need to sign up for Medicare by way of turning 65? Well, if you're self-employed, if you're an independent contractor, if you're on the Affordable Care Act exchange, Obamacare, if you're on COBRA, if you're on a private plan, you need to sign up for Medicare by way of turning 65. The only people who have an exception are those who are working for a large employer, meaning 20 employees or more, or their spouse is working for a large employer. So if you or your spouse are working for a large employer, then you can delay signing up for Medicare. And you can delay signing up for Medicare until you retire. But you don't want to wait, because if you wait until after you retire, then even though you'll still be in your special enrollment period to sign up for Medicare, you're going to have a gap in coverage. And you know that COBRA isn't creditable for the purpose of delaying Medicare. So sign up for Medicare a month or two before you retire if you're past age 65. So that way you don't have a gap in coverage. And this is also a very quick process, takes less than 5 minutes. There's just a one-page form for your human resources department to complete. Now, over 20% of the country is on a high deductible health insurance plan, and they contribute to a health savings account. Health savings accounts are amazing. I contribute to one here at Chapter. But here's the thing. If you're contributing to a health savings account, you should not start any part of Medicare until you're ready to retire. Instead, when you're ready to retire, that'll be the time to stop your HSA contributions. So here's the rule of thumb. If you're turning 65 and you're planning to go on Medicare, then discontinue HSA contributions the month before you retire, the month before you turn 65. Instead, if you're past age 65, then you need to stop contributions to your health savings account 6 months before you apply to enroll in Medicare. So there's a timing element here. This is the thorniest rule that the Social Security Administration has on the books. You actually need to discontinue your HSA contributions 6 months before you apply to enroll in Medicare if you're past age 65. And this is something we help human resources departments and their employees grapple with all the time. So if you have any questions about when an employee needs to stop HSA contributions, feel free to email us at fiducient@askchapter.com. I also write about this rule at length in It's Not That Complicated. The second costly Medicare mistake we help you or your employees avoid is the misconception that it doesn't matter when you sign up for Medicare. It really matters. It matters so that you have health insurance coverage. It also matters so that you avoid late enrollment penalties. And there are actually 2 late enrollment penalties. There's one on Medicare Part B, and there's one on Medicare Part D. So just knowing your enrollment timeline for when to sign up for Medicare means that you will avoid these lifetime late enrollment penalties. These penalties continue to compound for as long as you delay signing up for Medicare, and they're also lifetime. So make sure that you know when to apply to enroll in Medicare so that you avoid those 2 late enrollment penalties, the one on Part B and also the one on Part D. The only people who have an exception to delay signing up for Medicare are those who work for a large employer, rule of 20. Your employer or your spouse's employer must have 20 or more employees. That is the only exception for delaying Medicare. Now, you might be wondering, okay, how do I know if my employer coverage is at least as good and would allow me to delay signing up for Part D? Well, for all the benefit coordinators in the webinar, you know that you're required to provide this notice to your employees every fall. And you're also required to keep this notice on hand for 10 years. So what is considered an exception here? What is considered at least as good? It means your employer's drug benefit is at least as good. In other words, creditable. That's the word, that's the technical term for it, creditable for delaying Part D. And again, benefit coordinators are required to tell you this every fall and send a notice saying that their employer coverage is or is not creditable for the purpose of delaying enrollment in Medicare Part D. The third misconception we help clients avoid is the idea that there's nothing they can do about the high earner tax. So the standard Part B premium for 2025 is $185 per month. But if you or your employee is a high earner, then you're actually going to pay more for Medicare. There's a high earner tax, and there's actually 2 taxes. And this is something we can help you appeal. So the threshold amounts, those who owe the standard Part B premium are either a solo filer and earned less than $106,000 in 2023, or they're a joint filer and earned less than $212,000 in 2023. So it's a 2-year look back. But if you've had a change in circumstance, if you've had a life-changing event, then you can actually appeal these amounts and instead request that the government look at a more recent year. This is called IRMA. the income-related monthly adjustment amount. The government's acronym for it is IRMA. And you can appeal your IRMA. All you need is a life-changing event. The two most common are work stoppage or work reduction, and sadly, the third most common is divorce. This is something we help clients appeal all the time. They just need a life-changing event, and then they need to show the government that they would have had a material change based on looking if the government had looked at a more recent year. So either 2024 or their anticipated modified adjusted gross income for 2025. It's a 3-page form. We're very successful in helping clients appeal their IRMA, and you don't even need to provide your tax return. It's a 3-page form that the client signs under penalty of perjury, and if the government needs more information, then they just reach out. Now, if the client's estimate is off, then the government just comes back and bills for the difference that they would have owed had they properly filled out their Form 44 appeal. But this is Form 44. That's the form that your employees would use or clients would use to appeal their income-related monthly adjustment amount. And I know we're going to have some questions on this form in the Q&A. The fourth misconception we help clients avoid is the idea that Original Medicare covers all of your costs. You know this isn't true at this point. Medicare only covers 80% of your medical costs. So when you or your employees realize that there are these gaps in your Medicare, that's what motivates the conversation around obtaining additional coverage. How am I going to cover the 20% that I would otherwise owe out of pocket? What's more is Original Medicare is just Part A and Part B. The third leg of the stool, Part D, comes through a private insurance company. So you need to go through a private insurance company to get drug coverage. It doesn't come from Uncle Sam. Broadly speaking, there are two ways to achieve comprehensive coverage. Option one is to keep Original Medicare and add a Medicare supplement plan, which is also known as Medigap. This sits on top of Original Medicare and covers the 20% you'd otherwise owe out of pocket. It's the most flexible and comprehensive coverage. If you or your employee goes this route, then you just need to add a standalone prescription drug coverage so that you have Part D as well. Then there's option two. Option two is a replacement for Original Medicare administered by a private insurance company. This is Medicare Advantage. This is what you see advertised on television. Joe Namath, William Shatner, Jimmy Walker. You could pick your favorite Medicare Advantage spokesperson. What they're talking about is Part C, or an all-in-one plan. Those are all synonymous terms. Medicare Advantage, Part C, all-in-one. It's all referring to the same thing, option two. This is a replacement for Original Medicare administered by a private insurance company and subject to that insurance company's terms and conditions. And there's a whole lot of them. It's a multi-100-page document. Here's where we're in the world of network restrictions, unlike Original Medicare, which is networkless. Here's where we're also in the world of prior authorizations, meaning the insurance company gets a veto on the care that you and your doctor think that you need. It would be subject to the insurance company's prior approval. Now, option one and option two are mutually exclusive. It's one or the other, but these are the two options you have for achieving comprehensive coverage. So why do clients of Fiducient tend to choose option one, Medicare Supplement? Well, they tend to choose Medigap, Medicare Supplement, because they appreciate not having to worry about whether their doctor is in or out of network. The vast majority of doctors and institutions around the country accept Original Medicare. The second reason is they appreciate the freedom to see any specialist they want nationwide without asking for anyone's permission. So if you want to go to the Mayo Clinic, or the Cleveland Clinic, or MD Anderson, which is probably the nation's leading cancer research institute, each of these institutions works with Original Medicare. The third thing clients tend to appreciate is the cost certainty. Your deductible under certain Medicare supplement plan letter types would be $257 for this year. That's the Part B annual deductible for 2025, $257. That would also be your maximum out of pocket under certain Medigap letter types. And I'm going to show an example of one on the next slide. If you compare that to my deductible here at Chapter, my deductible is $6,000, meaning my wife, daughter, and I don't see $1 of benefit until we hit our $6,000 deductible. And then our maximum out of pocket is actually $10,000. I can't wait to be on Medicare and have just a multi-$100 deductible and out-of-pocket maximum. And then finally, Medigap is designed to last a lifetime. For a client who's turning 65 today, actuarial tables suggest they'll live 30 to 35 years. They have a 50-50 shot of living to 100. So the way we train our team here at Chapter, marry your Medigap, date your drug plan. The Medigap plan we help you sign up for when you first turn 65 or start Medicare is probably the plan that you're going to have for the long haul. But every fall, we want to help you shop your drug plan. Marry your Medigap, date your drug plan. The time for dating your drug plan is in the fall. So here's the most comprehensive Medigap plan letter type for someone who recently turned 65. It's Medigap plan letter G. G is in George. Under a plan letter G, you won't have any network restrictions. You don't need a referral in order to see a specialist. You don't have any additional bills or copays once you hit the Part B annual deductible, which is $257 for this year. That is also your maximum out of pocket. It works nationwide. So if you live in Illinois and you have a second home in Arizona or Florida, or you're a snowbird, it's great because it allows you to see specialists in each of those states without getting a prior authorization or asking for your Illinois doctor's permission. And it includes 80% international coverage when you travel abroad. And this actually was written about in the Wall Street Journal. We had a client who was vacationing in France. They suffered a heart condition and they were hospitalized for nearly 2 weeks. They racked up $30,000 in hospital bills. Because they had Medigap plan letter G, we were able to help them get $24,000 in reimbursement, so it didn't ruin their trip. Now, there are some limitations on the international coverage. First, it has to be for the first 60 days that you're outside the United States. And second, it's subject to a lifetime limit of $50,000. But this goes a long way in other countries, even Western Europe, which have lower healthcare costs than in the United States. So Medigap plan letter G is the most comprehensive and flexible option for someone who recently turned 65. The fifth misconception that we help clients avoid is that choosing drug coverage isn't important if you don't take expensive prescriptions. Even someone who isn't on any prescriptions at all should think carefully about signing up for Part D. The reason why is because what if you have a drug that's added during the course of the year? And the second reason is there's a lifetime late enrollment penalty for Medicare Part D. So even if you don't take any prescriptions, it's important to think about getting Part D coverage, and it doesn't cost an arm and a leg. There are many, many plans that are less than 2 to 3 cups of coffee per month. Literally, it's less than the cost of 2 to 3 cups of coffee at Starbucks per month in order to get Part D coverage, and it covers you in the event you have a prescription added during the course of the year, and it also helps you avoid the lifetime late enrollment penalty on Medicare Part D. There are some improvements on the way to Medicare Part D. Each of these improvements goes into effect on January 1st. In order to action them, you need to review your coverage between October 15th and December 7th. So the first improvement that's on the horizon is that there's going to be a maximum annual out-of-pocket cap on your drug costs, and it's going to be $2,100 for the upcoming year. In order for that maximum out-of-pocket to apply to your prescriptions, however, each of your prescriptions must be covered under the plan that you choose. So that's really important. If there's a prescription you take that isn't covered by your Part D plan, then that drug wouldn't be subject to the maximum annual out-of-pocket cap. The second improvement that's on the horizon is that previously seniors owed thousands of dollars in January or February when they were on an expensive prescription. Now, insurance companies are going to apply smoothing. So instead, you're going to pay for that expensive prescription over the course of the year, and it's going to be a little less than $200 if it's subject to that maximum annual out-of-pocket cap that's going into effect on January 1st. And then the third improvement that's on the horizon is that Medicare will be negotiating 10 prescriptions. And if your client is on one of those, or you're on one of those 10 expensive prescriptions, then you should see your costs go down substantially if you take one of those 10. So there's a list of 10 prescriptions that Medicare will be negotiating on your behalf for 2026. And each year they're going to be adding another 10 prescriptions to the list. The sixth misconception we help you avoid is the idea that your neighbor's plan is a good choice for you. I love my neighbor, but I don't see the same doctors, I don't take the same prescriptions, and I don't have the same priorities. So instead, in a one-on-one 45-minute consultation, which is free of charge, we go over your three Ps. And the three Ps are your providers. What doctors do you see? What doctors would you want to see if you developed a chronic condition? The second P, your prescriptions. What medications do you take, brand name or generic? What pharmacy do you like to go to, a national chain or a mom and pop drugstore? And then the third P, your priorities. What's important to you? Do you snowbird somewhere else? Do your grandchildren live in a different state? Do you plan to travel internationally? All of this factors into finding the single best fitting coverage for you. And it's important to work with an independent, unbiased advisory that it can help you search through all your options. The seventh mistake that we help you avoid is the idea that you only need to choose your coverage once. Instead, the time to review your coverage is every fall during the annual enrollment period from October 15th to December 7th. If you've been on a Medicare Advantage Option 2 plan, you might say, gee, I really want to consider an Option 1 plan. Well, the time to do that is during the annual enrollment period. You can also use the annual enrollment period in order to change to a different Medicare Advantage plan. There's competition, and even if you were on the best fitting plan for last year, that plan might be changing for the upcoming year. The doctor networks might be different. The plan's benefits are changing. And also the prescription benefit is changing due to the new regulations that are going into effect. So make sure to review your coverage between October 15th to December 7th. And this is important to do every single year because what's changing about Medicare Advantage or your standalone prescription drug plan are the premium and costs associated with the plan, the benefits offered by the plan, and of course, you know by now that with Medicare Advantage, the physician networks change. The networks can even change mid-year under Medicare Advantage. So here is your checklist in order to prepare for October 15th. First, if you're already on Medicare, then you should have received your annual notice of change in the mail last week. This will describe how your plan is changing for 2026. Second, write out your three Ps. Write out your providers, your prescriptions, and your priorities. And then third and finally, schedule your free Medicare consultation and make sure you work with an independent, unbiased advisory that has every insurance company and every plan option at the touch of their fingertips and isn't incentivized to show you one subset of plan versus another. Chapter earns revenue from insurance companies, and it doesn't matter which insurance company you choose. Our advisors are blinded as to which plans we earn revenue from and which ones we don't. So the only thing that matters to our advisors is making the single best fitting recommendation for you. So with that, if we aren't able to get to your question, please email us at fiducient@askchapter.com. And now I wanted to open the floor. Nick, do we have any questions that are coming in?
Yeah, we definitely have some questions. A great presentation, Ari, really helpful information. Question here where someone asked about the process of flipping from Medicare Advantage to Original Medicare, which you covered there under the open enrollment period. Anything you want to add there? I think there was a misconception that once you were on the Medicare Advantage plan that you couldn't make a future change.
You can certainly make a future change. In 46 states, you have a one-time opportunity to choose Medicare supplement without questions about your health history, though. So your magic opportunity, your golden ticket to obtain Medicare supplement, Medigap, is when you first start Medicare. Because in 46 states, you have a 6-month period in which an insurance company cannot ask you questions about your health history. If you're outside that 6-month period after starting Medicare, then in 46 states, they can. The only 4 states that are an exception are New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Maine. So they're all along the northern Atlantic seaboard.
Okay, it's very helpful. Some questions just relating to individuals where either they or their spouse are still employed in that large employer asterisk that you mentioned, at least 20 plus employees. The question came in, is there a benefit for an active employee with current company provided health insurance to enroll in Medicare Part A?
Yes, it would be advantageous to enroll in Medicare Part A so long as they are not contributing to a health savings account. And their opportunity to sign up for Medicare Part B will be when they retire, and they should just do it a couple months before they retire.
I found the 3 Ps extremely helpful as you were walking through the presentation. A couple questions here. Hey, for individuals that may not be in that 7-month open enrollment period, maybe they're not quite age 65, maybe they're a year or 18 months out. Are there any additional considerations they should be thinking about as it relates to their Medicare planning?
If they're 12 to 18 months out, then I would just recommend It's Not That Complicated as a great resource. And then when they're within 6 months of needing to sign up for Medicare, that'll be the time for them to have a one-on-one consultation with our team.
Perfect. An individual here has a question about living abroad after retirement, asking how should they think about Medicare. So I think perhaps if you just do that quick refresher on the caps and coverage as it relates to international coverage.
Yeah, if someone's planning to live abroad, if they're planning to become an expat, then it's going to depend on whether the country they're moving to, whether they're going to have a special enrollment period if they were to move back to the United States. And really, it depends on the country that we're talking about.
Someone just asked, broadly speaking, can chapter advise individuals from across all 50 states? I know you had that asterisk on 4 particular states.
Yes, we're nationwide. So regardless of where your client lives, we can help them. Just to spell it out, in 46 states, if you have a pre-existing condition, then you certainly want to sign up for Medigap when you're within your Medigap open enrollment period, which is the 6 months after you start Medicare. So this is very important. The 4 states that are an exception here are New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Maine. But regardless of where you, your client, or your employee lives, we can help.
Okay, perfect. An individual asks if they're happy with their coverage. Do they need to re-enroll every year? I know you said that, look, health conditions, prescriptions, providers might change. So there are thoughts as far as reevaluating. But if someone generally finds, hey, my coverage seems to be working well, is there anything they specifically need to change each year for the enrollment period?
No, there's not something that they need to change, but I would encourage them to just read through their annual notice of change to make sure that their plan isn't materially altered for 2026. And then
Okay.
it might be helpful to have a 10 to 15-minute conversation just to get a second opinion and do a double check against all the available options.
Okay. A question here as far as individuals who've already selected Medicare Advantage, how difficult is it to switch over to original Medicare and to select a Medigap plan?
It's not very difficult. In 46 states, there'll just be like 5 to 7 questions about your recent health history. Those vary insurance company by insurance company, and it's something our advisors have at the touch of their fingertips and can talk about in depth.
Okay, perfect. A couple questions here relating to HSA, the HSA exception.
Yep,
That's a particular wrinkle as it relates to Medicare. So
yep.
individuals that are still actively working, they're actively contributing to an HSA. They're wondering, hey, when am I able to actually sign up for Part A Medicare if I'm still contributing to that HSA?
They shouldn't sign up for any part of Medicare for as long as they're actively contributing to their HSA.
Okay. And can you remind the audience once again, just as far as the stipulations as it relates to turning off your HSA contributions before enrolling in Medicare?
Yep. So the person, if they're starting Medicare by way of turning 65, so for example, Nick, you're turning 65 on December 23rd. If you work for an employer that has an HSA, you just want to turn off that HSA at the end of November, the month
Okay.
before you turn 65. If instead you're planning to remain on your employer provided coverage, then do not start any part of Medicare. And instead, you'll turn off your HSA 6 months before you apply to enroll.
Okay. And then a question here relating to the that 7-month special enrollment window. You noted that coverage is dated the first of the month. So the question was, does my coverage effectively start the first of the month after my birthday month of turning 65? Looking at that coverage card that you showed in your example.
Yep. Going back to it. This is John Smith's red, white, and blue card. So
Yep.
John has a birthday in March. And as long as John applies for Medicare in December, January, or February, John's Medicare will begin the first of the month in which he turns 65.
Perfect. A question here, does Medigap coverage show up on, since we're on this topic, on your Medicare insurance card for individuals trying to remember what supplemental coverage they might have?
So it'll actually show up in the client's Medicare.gov portal.
Okay, perfect. I'm just trying to scan through a lot of questions, a lot of great information that you shared today.
Yeah, these are awesome questions. Thank you for surfacing them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that hits on most of the high points that the key points that we discussed today. So again, Ari, great information. Really appreciate your time today. As a reminder to all on this call, a recording or a replay of this recording will be made available on the Fiducient website under our Insight section and then under videos. So in the next couple of days, you should be able to see that if you want to revisit some of the helpful information that was surfaced today. Ari's sharing the QR code to get that complimentary copy. And then once again, if you have questions as it relates to Medicare planning, Fiducient at Ask Chapter. So to the extent you want to follow up with that. Ari, thanks again.
Thanks so much, Nick. Thank you, Kristen, for helping organize the webinar. And whatever your employees or you do, just make sure to review your coverage between October 15th and December 7th. That's the key takeaway.
Perfect. Very timely, given that we're only a couple of weeks away here.
Yes.
Well, thanks again, Ari. Have a great day, everyone.